Should you trust the science? When it comes to marketing cannabis products, the answer might not always be yes. Hey, but before we get into that, today's video is brought to you by Real Grow Lab. If you want to connect with the best growers from all over the world, get tips and tricks on how to grow the dankest plants possible, and not have to worry about the censorship we get from YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, go check out realgrowlab.com. Get all kinds of great grow talk Q&A, plus see all the stuff YouTube won't let me show you in these videos. Sign up and join our growing community over at realgrowlab.com. Or download the app at the Apple or Android App Store. Now let's get back to today's video. All right, Hi-C, let's get into this one.
Oh man, this is going to be, I already see the comment section blowing up, but I am a firm believer in the scientific method.
Of course. That's what got us out of the dark ages, brother.
Yeah, but scientists are still human. So trusting the scientific method doesn't always mean trusting the science.
No. I mean, everybody goes to work and gets a paycheck, and everybody worries at the end of the week where they'll get another paycheck, right? You're concerned about your career. Scientists are the same way, particularly in the university system. Professors, I remember when I was in college, but these professors that were doing all these studies, and it was like the grad students, the people that were just trying to curry favor with him, that were doing all his work for him.
Yeah, and I also think about, I've seen stuff on different realms of science where scientists themselves complain that there's kind of like an orthodox box, and if you stray outside of the approved opinions, it doesn't matter how much evidence you have, your papers aren't going to get published, and there's problems in the scientific community.
Oh yeah, definitely. The problem is that everybody has to go to work. Everybody has to get funding. If I'm studying some new the human microbiome was one that I'm into because of bacteria and fungi and recharge and everything. And it turns out one guy decided that he was going to put out a paper that said it completely changes and affects your mood, the microbiome does. And then they said, hey, we actually studied this again and we couldn't repeat it. And they said, well, that's your problem over there, all right? This is good for business.
Right. And there's something called the replicability crisis, replication crisis.
Yeah, they can't repeat this stuff.
I have seen that. A lot of scientific papers that get published, they get published as fact, even though they can't be replicated.
Yes. Yeah. And that's another thing. And then what happens if your professor, the guy you're giving you your doctorate, okay? And he's the one that just put out this paper, and then you can't repeat it. Are you going to go out there and be like, hey, you know what? That UV stuff, I think it was wrong. No, you're going to sit there and shut your mouth, man. Get your doctorate degree.
Okay. And so that kind of leads us into what I wanted to talk to you about today, which is science and marketing. I'm a marketer. We use scientific white papers to back up our selling claims.
And what is that? What you just said, a white paper, it's a peer-reviewed paper, right? That's a paper, or at least what we're looking for. Science, they do these experiments, they submit their findings to a journal, and they're published. There's a bunch of different journals. The ones like Science and Nature are, considered cream of the crop. When they publish something, it's good for them. When they publish something that's, oh, did you read in Nature this week that the human microbiome controls your decision making? Do you think 6 months later they want to be like, hey, by the way, we found out another guy tried to repeat that. It didn't turn out to be true. Do we want to waste the front page? Do we want to waste one of our 70 pages in our journal or 200 pages telling you how we were wrong? That ain't good for business, man.
Exactly. And that's what my point was. As a marketer, I'm often looking for science to back up what I'm selling.
Yep.
And as
well, you've got one of these strawberry watermelon drinks and you go, I don't trust a beverage with an asterisk. Yeah. Like, what's the asterisk mean?
Yeah. So that kind of brings us around to the point, though. If we're selling products to cannabis growers, cannabis growers are looking for science to back up what they're buying.
Yep.
But just because there's quote unquote science indicating one thing, doesn't necessarily mean that it's actually true. And I guess we've got the bro science meme. But science might be just as untrustworthy.
I'm getting defensive about that. I want to call it anecdotal evidence, which means that if I have one person doing an experiment and they get some results. And then I've got 1,000 people doing an experiment, whether I'm thinking of like the different lights that are out there, whether it's the UV or the infrared. You've got all these people. You got people on a university level doing it, and then you've got a bunch of bros like JR and our crew that are playing around with UV. And what we're finding isn't the same.
Yeah, and that brings up a concern, which is the results I get in a laboratory might not be the same results I get in a grow. And why might that be?
I mean, particularly for plants. What I mean, if you've listened to any of these other episodes that we've done, segments, whatever the shows, no, they're just episodes, right? We talk about plants interacting. I don't know if you want to call it plant intelligence, but they are social creatures. They can smell things. They can feel when they're crowded. There's all these interactions that plants have.
Yeah, and so a plant in a controlled, sterile environment might not have the same reaction to different stimuluses like lights, nutrients, that it would in your grow tent or that it would in your greenhouse.
Absolutely. If you see what they grow these things, the plants in when they're doing experiments, they're called growth chambers. You can Google them. It's like a coffin. Looks like a coffin for a plant, with lights, and it's got some circulation in there, but there is no communication going on. There is no interaction with, plants touching each other, smells. It's all cut off. I don't think that's the way we should be studying plants.
So that brings me to another question.
Sure.
Which is a lot of cannabis growers don't approach growing cannabis like it's a plant. They approach it like it's an experiment, a science experiment.
Sure. Yeah, I am guilty as all. When I found out about growing cannabis, I thought to myself, wow, I want the biggest tech, the most tech I can get. I started with deep water culture and just, there's nothing more exciting. You see it at Epcot Center. They're growing plants without soil. You're like, wow, that's neat. And I became a much better grower when I started talking to, my neighbor that grew great tomatoes and grew great hot peppers. And I was like, well, I'm growing weed. That's different. No, it's not different. She showed me. She goes, me too. She showed me a plant. But it's not that different. So when you start thinking of it as another plant, if I can grow good peppers and recognize nutrient deficiencies on my peppers or what overwatering is on them, if I can do it on my tomatoes, it will make you a better cannabis grower. Those translate.
And what I'm thinking of immediately is back when most growers thought of it as a science experiment. Sure. It was really easy to get tricked into buying all of this fancy equipment, these 20-bottle nutrient lines, and they use science to back up to sell that stuff.
Science and marketing, yeah.
Science in marketing.
Not bad. It was pretty bad marketing, I'll say.
Okay, so that leads me to my last concern.
Sure.
If I'm the marketing CMO for a company that sells something expensive or maybe unnecessary,
sure,
and I need science to back it up, if I go hire a scientist to do my research and come to the conclusion that I want them to come to, you might run into the issue where the scientist is biased, his paycheck is on the line, and he might look over science that discredits my product.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you've got fraud where people just don't care. And they're just going to be like, hey, you know what? I did the tests and here's the results, And then there's people that are just biased. If I give you 2 kinds of silica and this is the kind that my company just put their life savings behind, I did them, this one worked better. It just works better, man. Look, you got that lying to yourself in your head. So there's all sorts of stuff. Doesn't have to be like malicious.
Right. So I guess the final conclusion about this is it's good to trust science, but it's also good to be skeptical.
That's what it is. Science is amazing. I am all for trusting science. I like to say this. It's what got us out of the dark ages. But anecdotal evidence and the community. We have had a great community of growers that have been growing amazing cannabis for 20, 30 years at this point, without all the peer-reviewed university studies and everything. And when I talk to my grower friends, we have the DGC, it's a community of them.
Real Grow Lab?
Real Grow Lab, absolutely. realgrowlab.com. But I learn, and I'm like, hey, look, this doesn't go exactly what this peer-reviewed research paper said that maybe it wasn't even done on cannabis, you know? But so anyway, yeah, I would look around the community. You can certainly, with anything in this world today, you got to be skeptical, right? But there is great information from the community, from other growers. That's really where I look for to get my information. And then I approach it with the skeptic's eye. But what about you? Have you ever been misled by some fancy scientific claim on a bottle? Let me know in the comments. And if you like this video, please hit that like button. Smash that subscribe button. Share this video with another grower you know. And check out the other couple videos YouTube's recommending. I hope you'll dig them.